The alien command bridge was already screaming when the planet did something impossible. Warning lights flared across curved crystal walls. Translators shouted over each other. Gravity alarms howled in rising panic. Below them, Earth was moving. Not spinning. Not shaking. Opening. The invasion fleet had secured orbit hours ago. Human satellites were dead. Defense platforms shattered. The planet was supposed to be quiet now, subdued, waiting for surrender. Instead, the blue world cracked. Oceans bulged upward as if pushed from beneath. Cloud systems twisted into spirals, dragged by something vast forcing its way toward the sky. Seismic lines lit up across continents, not like earthquakes, but like controlled fractures, precise, deliberate. An alien sensor officer shrieked as his console flooded with impossible numbers. Mass reading is increasing. No, multiplying. The source is inside the planet. The commander rose from her seat, disbelief flashing across her scaled face. That's not possible, she snapped. A planet cannot launch anything. The floor vibrated as if space itself recoiled. Then the clouds tore apart. A black shape rose from the atmosphere, punching through storms, water, and fire. It was not sleek. It was not elegant. It was scarred, covered in old burn marks, missing armor plates, its surface layered like something repaired again and again over centuries. It just kept rising. Alien ships adjusted formation automatically, weapons tracking the emerging object. Targeting systems failed to lock properly, confused by the sheer size of it. It was bigger than their carriers, bigger than their flagships. A structure, not just a ship. No heat spike, another officer whispered. No weapon charge. The commander felt cold fear crawl through her chest. If it isn't a weapon, she said slowly, what is it? The object finally cleared the atmosphere. Earth fell away beneath it, clouds still clinging to its hull like smoke around a rising god. The bridge went silent. Data streamed in, each line worse than the last. Internal compartments. Multiple decks, thousands of them. Power systems layered redundantly, inefficient by alien standards, but enduring. This thing was not built for speed. It was built to last. A junior analyst spoke without permission, voice shaking. Commander, its structure suggests it was embedded into the planet. Deep. Possibly for hiding, the commander finished. Her eyes locked on the tactical display. They had scanned Earth for years before the invasion. Charted every orbital station, every moon base, every known human shipyard. They had never looked down. The massive vessel rotated slowly, positioning itself between Earth and the alien armada. Not aggressively, not charging weapons. It simply stood there, as if that alone should be enough. The fleet's targeting systems recalibrated. Hundreds of alien cannons aligned, ready to fire. Victory was still mathematically assured. And yet, no one gave the order. The commander stared at the hull markings now visible on the rising ship. They were not fresh. They were not proud. They were old. Scratched into the armor were symbols no database could identify. Names etched and re-etched, layered over each other, like a grave wall that had run out of space. This ship, the commander said quietly, has seen war before. A communications officer interrupted, panic returning to his voice. Commander, human channels just activated. Planet-wide broadcast. The bridge speakers crackled. A human voice filled the air. Calm, tired, unafraid. This is Earth Defense Command, it said. If you are hearing this, then it has begun. The commander felt something she had not felt in 1,000 battles. Uncertainty. The human voice continued. We did not build this to win. The Supercarrier's engines flared, low, deep, controlled. The voice finished. We built it so we would still be here when everyone else was gone. The channel cut. The alien commander whispered the question that no one else dared to ask. What kind of species hides a ship like that inside their own world? And as the Supercarrier fully powered up, ancient systems waking from a sleep measured in centuries, the invasion fleet finally understood one terrifying truth. They had not awakened a defense. They had awakened as a last resort. Silence spread through the alien armada like a disease. The massive object hung in orbit, motionless now, its engines dimmed to a steady glow. It did not advance. It did not retreat. It did not threaten. That unsettled them more than any weapon ever could. On the flagship bridge, the commander forced herself to breathe slowly. Panic was contagious, and the command could not afford it. Status, she ordered. Reports came in, clipped and tense. No hostile fire detected. No energy buildup consistent with weapons. Human planetary defenses remain offline. Someone added, quietly, "The ship is waiting." Waiting. That word echoed in the commander's mind. She turned to the Strategic Council arrayed behind her, veterans of dozens of conquests. None met her eyes. They had studied humanity carefully. Or so they thought. Humans were loud, divided, wasteful. They argued with each other even while facing extinction. Their wars were chaotic, emotional, and inefficient. They burned through resources as if tomorrow did not matter. That was the assessment. That was the assumption. Run a full historical comparison, the commander said. I want to know why a species like this has a structure older than our empire sitting inside its planet. A tactical officer hesitated. Commander, we already have preliminary matches. The holographic display shifted. What appeared was not human data. It was alien wreckage. Fragments of hull designs from extinct civilizations. Engine configurations that belonged to species wiped out centuries ago. Weapon scars whose signatures matched wars recorded only in ancient archives. The Supercarrier's hull was a mosaic of survival. It was not built once. It was added to. A systems analyst swallowed. Commander, this vessel didn't come from a single era. Its internal sections were constructed across thousands of years. The bridge stirred uneasily. That's impossible, one counselor snapped. Humans barely reached space a few centuries ago. The analyst nodded slowly. Yes, that's what makes it disturbing. The commander's eyes narrowed. Explain. The analyst expanded the display, isolating internal schematics pulled from deep scans. The core structure is ancient, he said, crude by our standards. But wrapped around it are newer layers, each one adapting to a different technological age. Different enemies, different conditions. A realization crept through the bridge. This was not a ship built at the height of human power. This was a ship built during human fear. Humans don't discard old tools, the analyst continued. They reinforce them, repair them, keep them alive long past when others would replace them. One of the counselors laughed nervously. So they're sentimental. No, the analyst said. They're paranoid. The commander felt a chill. She remembered the human voice. Calm. Certain. We did not build this to win. That was not a threat. It was a confession. Commander, the weapons chief said, trying to sound confident. We still outnumber them. One ship changes nothing. The commander nodded, slowly. Yes, she agreed. One ship. She turned to the fleet channel. All vessels, she ordered, prepare a limited strike. Target the emerging structure only. No planetary bombardment. There was a pause. Commander, a junior officer said, shouldn't we eliminate the planet first? Remove their ability to coordinate. No, the commander replied. If this ship is what they chose to show us, I want to see what it does. The order was given. Energy lances fired. The first wave slammed into the Supercarrier's forward hull. Shields flared. Old, layered, uneven. Some failed instantly. Others held stubbornly, bending instead of breaking. The ship did not return fire. A second volley struck. Armor peeled away in sheets, revealing deeper layers beneath. Internal fires bloomed, quickly sealed off by bulkheads. The Supercarrier absorbed the damage. The weapons chief frowned. It's letting us hit it. Why? A counselor whispered. Then the answer came. Human communications spiked across the system. Not military channels. Civilian ones. Emergency frequencies. Deep space relays. Old probes thought long dead. The Supercarrier was not broadcasting orders. It was broadcasting time. Evacuation routes lit up across Earth's surface. Hidden bunkers activated. Underground cities sealed. Orbital debris shifted, forming crude but effective shields around population centers. The ship was coordinating everything. Without central command. Without panic. It was not fighting the invasion. It was managing the damage. The commander's claws tightened around the rail. This ship isn't a weapon, she said slowly. No, the analyst replied. It's infrastructure. Another officer looked up, eyes wide. Commander, human ground resistance just changed patterns. They're not counterattacking. They're withdrawing. Withdrawing. The aliens had expected defiance. Rage. Last stands. Instead, humanity was pulling back with discipline that did not match its reputation. The Supercarrier absorbed another hit. A section of its hull detonated outward, controlled, deliberate. Debris scattered into orbit. The fleet cheered briefly. Then navigation alarms screamed. The debris wasn't dead metal. Each fragment stabilized itself. Aligned. I began to move. "Commander," a helmsman shouted. "Orbital space is becoming unstable." The commander stared at the display. The humans had not hidden a ship. They had hidden a system. The debris field interfered with targeting. Sensor echoes multiplied. Gravity wells fluctuated unpredictably. Ships had to adjust formation constantly just to avoid drifting into one another. And through it all, the supercarrier remained still, silent, patient. "Why aren't they attacking?" a counselor demanded. The commander answered softly. "Because they don't need to." A new transmission cut through the chaos. "Humans. Unencrypted. This is Earth Defense Command," the same voice said. "You believe this ends with our defeat." The supercarrier rotated slightly, aligning its vast bulk perfectly between the planet and the fleet. "You are wrong." The voice continued, steady as stone. "You think we built weapons to win wars." Another hit struck the carrier. Another section burned away. "We built systems to survive them." A pause. "You assumed we would fight like you." The fleet's formation faltered as two ships clipped each other, engines flaring. "We don't." The transmission ended. On the flagship bridge, no one spoke. The commander finally understood the fatal mistake they had made. They had judged humanity by its noise, its arguments, its inefficiencies, its visible chaos. They had never asked what humans did when they were quiet. She looked at the supercarrier again, at the scars, the layers, the ancient core wrapped in centuries of adaptation. This was not a symbol of strength. It was a record of refusal. Refusal to disappear. Refusal to forget. Refusal to accept extinction as inevitable. A final report arrived, chilling in its simplicity. "Commander, based on internal volume and power distribution." The analyst hesitated. This ship could operate independently for generations. The commander closed her eyes. One ship, not to win, but to ensure that no matter how many times the galaxy tried to erase them, humans would still be there to remember. And somewhere, deep within the supercarrier's ancient core, systems continued to wake up. Not weapons, plans, contingencies, memories. The invasion had only just begun. And for the first time in her long career, the alien commander feared not humanity's strength, but its patience. The supercarrier did not answer the next volley. Alien cannons burned hot, lances of energy tearing across space, striking exposed sections of the massive hull. Armor failed in places. The entire deck went dark. Fires bloomed like dying stars and were sealed off just as quickly. Still, no return fire. On the flagship bridge, confusion began to rot into fear. "Commander," the weapons chief said, voice tight. "Their primary batteries remain inactive." "How many?" the commander asked. "All of them." That made no sense. Any warship that large should have answered by now. Even a defensive platform would have lashed out. But the supercarrier endured hit after hit with grim silence, like something that had already accepted pain as a constant. The commander turned to sensors, scanned internal movement. The display shifted. Inside the carrier, thousands of signals moved, small, fast, chaotic. "Those aren't fighters," the analyst said slowly. "No," the commander agreed. "Those are people." The truth struck harder than any weapon. The supercarrier was full, not drones, not autonomous systems, of humans. Deck after deck showed life signs. Crew, technicians, engineers, medics. Not rushing to battle stations. Not preparing an attack. They were evacuating. No, rearranging. Bulkheads sealed behind them. Power rerouted. Entire sections were deliberately abandoned, written off in cold calculations. The ship was not reacting emotionally. It was making choices. "Commander," the analyst said, dread creeping into his voice. "They are sacrificing parts of the ship to preserve others." "Why?" a counselor demanded. "Why not defend everything?" The commander watched the patterns, slowly understanding. "Because they don't believe everything can be saved." Another strike tore through the carrier's midsection. A massive internal explosion followed. The fleet cheered. Then the ship shifted. Not forward, not back. It rotated. The damaged side turned outward, presenting itself fully to the alien guns, while the intact side faced Earth. A shield. A literal one. The commander felt her breath catch. They're using the ship as armor, she whispered. For the planet, the analyst finished. The supercarrier absorbed another barrage meant for Earth's surface. The planet's atmosphere flared but held. Cities below remained intact. The aliens could bypass it, fly around, attack from another angle. But the carrier anticipated that too. It adjusted position with slow, massive burns, always sliding back into place. Never fast, never elegant, relentless. This is inefficient, a counselor said sharply. They're wasting the ship. No, the commander replied. They're spending it. The difference was terrifying. A new human transmission cut through, weaker this time, static-laced, strained. This is Deck Command 7, a human voice said, breathing hard. Hull breach contained. Casualties acceptable. Acceptable. The word echoed across the bridge. Another voice followed, calmer, older. Redirect power from Section Delta. Seal it off. We are here. But that section. I know. No hesitation. No debate. The channel went silent. Moments later, Section Delta vanished from sensors. Gone. Not destroyed by alien fire, but deliberately severed, jettisoned into space. The supercarrier cut itself apart to survive. A junior alien officer recoiled. They're destroying their own ship. The commander did not look away. They've done this before. She could see it now in the design. Modular sections. Redundant cores. Systems built to fail without collapsing the whole. This was not a ship meant to return home. It was a ship meant to die slowly, while something else lived. The fleet repositioned, attempting to flank. The supercarrier responded by releasing something new. Thousands of small craft poured from its bays, not fighters, but ungainly vessels bristling with antennae, engines barely powerful enough to maneuver. What are those? The weapons chief demanded. Unknown, the analyst replied. They're broadcasting everywhere. The signals spread across the system. Human colonies on distant moons activated. Deep space relays woke from decades of silence. Even derelict probes began transmitting data. The carrier was not commanding an army. It was awakening a network. Earth's defenses, once shattered, began to reappear, not as weapons, but as systems. Shield grids flickered back online. Old orbital platforms reconfigured into shelters. Civilian ships received routes and instructions with ruthless clarity. The aliens had expected chaos. Instead, they saw coordination born from disaster. How long has this been prepared? A counselor asked quietly. The analyst hesitated. Based on system age, possibly centuries. The commander closed her eyes briefly. Humanity had expected this. Not them specifically, but someone. Eventually, the supercarrier took another hit. A deep one. Internal life signs spiked, then dropped sharply. For the first time, the ship responded. Not with weapons. With sound. A low-frequency transmission rolled across space, vibrating through hulls, through bones. It was not a message meant for aliens. It was human. A roll call. Names spoken calmly. One after another. Some answered. Some did not. The list continued anyway. The bridge was deathly silent. Even the most hardened alien veterans felt something twist inside them. They're counting their dead, the analyst whispered. And they're not stopping the battle to do it, the commander said. They're doing both. Another human voice followed the roll call, steady but raw. To all decks still active, hold. We are buying time. Buying time. Not winning. Not surviving. Buying. The supercarrier's engines flared again, stronger now. It pushed forward, not toward the fleet, but deeper into the debris field it had created earlier. The fragments began to move faster. Smarter. Gravity warped. Sensors failed. Alien ships struggled to maintain formation as space itself turned hostile. What did they do? The weapons chief demanded. The analyst stared at the data, stunned. They're using mass. Old mass. The debris isn't just metal, it's dense. Ancient alloys. Some of it predates their space age. Why would they keep that? A counselor asked. The commander answered. Because humans don't throw away what still works. The battlefield became a maze. Alien ships collided. Thrusters failed. Weapons missed as targeting systems drowned in false echoes. And still, the supercarrier did not fire. It simply endured. The commander's confidence finally cracked. This isn't a battle, she said softly. It's a delay. The realization hit the bridge like a physical blow. The humans were not trying to defeat the fleet. They were stalling it. For evacuation. For preparation. For something worse. "Commander," the analyst said, voice shaking. "If this ship fails..." The commander finished the thought herself. "It means whatever comes next is ready." She stared at the massive vessel, now scarred, burning, incomplete, yet unbroken. A human ship that refused to fight, because it had already decided what mattered more than victory. The supercarrier rotated one last time, locking itself perfectly into orbit, engines straining as if bracing against the weight of the galaxy itself. A final human transmission echoed out, barely audible. "We hold." The commander felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. Whatever humanity was preparing, this ship was only the beginning, and it was willing to die to prove it. The first human screams reached the alien sensors by accident. They were not broadcast as distress calls. They were not amplified or encoded. They leaked through ruptured bulkheads as raw sound. Vibrations carried through metal, atmosphere, and finally space, distorted but unmistakable. Pain. On the flagship bridge, several officers stiffened. One turned away from his console. "That channel is unstable," the analyst said quickly. "We can mute it." The commander raised one clawed hand. "No," she said. "Leave it." Another strike hit the supercarrier. This one punched deep. Entire internal sections vanished from scans, replaced by expanding clouds of debris and fire. Life signs flickered, hundreds at once, then stabilized. Not because they were alive, because the system stopped counting them. Inside the carrier, humans moved through smoke and darkness with brutal efficiency. Emergency lights painted corridors red. Gravity stuttered, then failed completely in some sections. A human officer's voice cut through internal comms, calm to the point of cruelty. "Section 9 is lost. Seal it. Now." A younger voice answered, panicked. "There are still people in." "I know," the officer said. "Seal it." A pause. Then the sound of pressure doors slamming shut. The screaming stopped. On the alien bridge, silence followed. Not relief, but something heavier. "They're killing their own," a counselor said, horrified. The commander shook her head slowly. "No," she replied. "They're choosing who lives." That distinction mattered more than any weapon. The supercarrier continued to burn. Fires spread across its exterior, oxygen venting in violent plumes. Alien gunners pressed the attack, convinced the ship could not endure much longer. But something changed. The ship began to respond. Not with guns, with movement. It adjusted its internal mass distribution, shifting enormous weight within itself. Gravity fields stabilized in key sections while collapsing entirely in others. Damaged areas were turned into dead zones, space where nothing mattered anymore. Human crews crossed those zones anyway. Magnetic boots failed. Tethers snapped. Bodies drifted into fire and vacuum. Still, the work continued. On the bridge, the analyst's voice trembled. "Commander, they're sending crews into areas with zero survival probability." "For repairs?" a counselor asked weakly. "No," the analyst said. "For delays." The supercarrier's engines surged again, but unevenly this time. Power bled from one side of the ship into another, reinforcing a massive internal structure near its core. "What's there?" the weapons chief demanded. The analyst zoomed in, eyes widening. Not a reactor. Not weapons. Then what? Data vaults. Population archives. Genetic banks. Cultural records. The commander went still. "They're protecting their memory," she whispered. Another internal transmission leaked through. "This is Engineering 3, a human voice said, strained, breath ragged. "We can hold coolant flow for 3 more minutes." "Understood," came the reply. "You'll need 5. A pause. Then, quietly, "Do what you can." The alien bridge watched as the engineering section's life signs spiked, then vanished in a sudden flash of radiation. The coolant flow held. The core stabilized. The supercarrier remained operational. 3 minutes bought 2 more. 2 more bought another. The aliens had fought countless species before. Many had sacrificed soldiers. Some had sacrificed cities. None had sacrificed systems like this. This was not desperation. It was doctrine. "Commander," the analyst said, voice hollow, "this ship is designed to calculate acceptable loss in real time." The commander nodded grimly. They decided long ago what they were willing to lose. Another volley struck. This time, the carrier answered, not with fire, but with a massive structural shift. A section of its hull detached cleanly, separating from the main body. For a moment, The alien fleet celebrated. Then the detached section ignited. It did not explode outward. It collapsed inward, compressing mass until gravity spiked violently. Alien ships caught too close were dragged off course, crushed, torn apart by forces they could not counter. A counselor shouted, "That was a weapon." "No," the commander said. "That was a sacrifice." The supercarrier had turned part of itself into a gravity bomb. Not planned in advance. Calculated on the spot. "Commander," the weapons chief said urgently, "we cannot continue this engagement pattern. They are using loss itself as a tool." The commander did not answer immediately. She was watching something else. Human life signs within the ship were declining, but not collapsing. The distribution was changing, concentrating deeper toward the core. They were retreating inward, like an animal curling around its heart. A human transmission reached the fleet again, weaker now. "This is Earth Defense Command," the familiar voice said. It sounded older, tired, but unbroken. "Phase 1 complete." Phase 1. The words chilled the bridge. "You have damaged this vessel," the voice continued. "That was expected." Another impact rocked the carrier. Another section vanished. "You believe you are watching us lose." The ship adjusted position again, taking a hit meant for Earth's southern hemisphere. Atmospheric flares lit the planet below, but no cities burned. We measure success differently. Inside the carrier, a small group of humans gathered in a failing command chamber. Smoke filled the air. Consoles sparked. A young officer looked at the senior commander, eyes wide. "Sir, evacuation pods are still functional. We can still." The commander shook his head. "Pods draw power," he said simply. "We need that power elsewhere." The officer swallowed. Understood. He did not argue. He did not beg. He turned back to his console and kept working. On the alien bridge, a counselor whispered, "Why don't they surrender?" The commander answered without looking away. "Because surrender would waste what they've already paid." The supercarrier's outer structure was now barely holding together. Fires burned freely. Entire decks were gone. Yet the ship's core systems glowed brighter than ever. The analyst gasped. "They're compressing power inward. They're abandoning everything else." "For what?" the weapons chief demanded. The commander finally understood. For endurance. The carrier was becoming smaller, denser, harder to kill, less a ship, more of a bunker. A final internal human transmission leaked through, meant only for those still aboard. "This is command," the voice said softly. "If you can hear this, thank you." There was no speech, no rallying cry, just gratitude. One by one, internal signals went dark, not all at once, but in controlled patterns, as if lives were being spent with deliberate care. The alien fleet hesitated. They had expected panic by now, mutiny, collapse. Instead, they saw a species calmly deciding how much of itself it could afford to lose. The commander felt something she had never felt before in war. Shame. "Commander," the analyst said quietly, "if this continues, the ship will survive long enough to complete whatever Phase 2 is." The commander stared at the burning, dying supercarrier. A vessel that did not beg, did not rage, did not flee. It simply endured, long enough for something else to live. She gave the order she had sworn never to give lightly. "All ships," she said, "pull back. Reassess." The fleet began to withdraw, damaged and shaken. The supercarrier did not pursue. It did not celebrate. It drifted, broken but unyielding, still positioned between Earth and the stars. Inside its battered core, human systems continued to run, on borrowed power, borrowed time, and borrowed lives. And across the galaxy, unseen and unprepared, the consequences of that endurance were already moving. Humanity had paid the price, without hesitation, without regret, and whatever came next would carry that cost forward, into a war the galaxy was no longer sure it could survive. The alien fleet did not flee far. They regrouped just beyond the worst of the debris field, engines glowing as damaged ships struggled to hold formation. Hulls were scarred, crews shaken, confidence cracked, but not broken. They still believed in numbers. The supercarrier drifted in silence, its massive frame barely held together by internal force fields and stubborn engineering. Fires burned uncontrolled across its surface. Large portions of it were simply gone, sheared away, sacrificed, spent. To the alien commanders watching from afar, it finally looked like what it should have from the beginning. A dying ship. "Assessment," the fleet commander demanded. The analyst's reply was cautious. Structural integrity below 40%. Weapon systems are still inactive. Life signs minimal. A counselor exhaled sharply. Then it bleeds. Good. The commander did not share their relief. Where is it drifting? She asked. The navigation officer checked. Frowned. Checked again. It isn't drifting, Commander. The display zoomed out. The supercarrier was moving, slowly, deliberately, toward the densest region of orbital debris. Not the scattered wreckage from earlier fighting, but something older, darker. A ring of matter that should not have been there. What is that field? The commander asked. The analyst hesitated. It's pre-existing. We assumed it was natural debris. Captured asteroids. Remnants of failed satellites. Assumed. The commander repeated. She leaned closer to the display. The debris was too evenly spaced. Too carefully distributed. Massive objects mixed with dust, arranged not randomly, but with subtle symmetry. A pattern. Commander, the analyst said slowly. This debris didn't form recently. How old? Based on orbital decay and material degradation, he paused. Several hundred years. Possibly more. The bridge went quiet. Humanity had not just prepared a ship. They had prepared the space itself. The supercarrier entered the field. Nothing exploded. Nothing attacked. First, alien sensors began to struggle. Readings conflicted. Ranges fluctuated. Distances warped. Ships at the edge of the field reported slight gravitational pulls. Nothing dangerous, just wrong. Probably residual mass distortion from the carrier's earlier maneuver. A counselor said dismissively. The commander did not answer. She was watching the carrier's engines. They were barely active now, just enough to maintain position. The ship was not pushing through the field. It was settling into it, like it belonged there. Inside the supercarrier, deep in the compressed core, human officers worked in near silence. Consoles were dimmed to save power. Oxygen was rationed by the breath. A senior engineer glanced at a countdown timer ticking slowly downward. Field alignment? He asked. Stable, another replied. All nodes responding. The engineer nodded. Then it's begun. Outside, the debris field changed. Not visibly, not dramatically, but mass began to shift. Tiny fragments adjusted position by centimeters. Larger chunks rotated. Invisible forces threaded between them, linking piece to piece. The alien fleet noticed only when their ships began to drift. Thrusters to counter, the fleet commander ordered. Engines flared. Some ships stabilized. Others overcorrected, bumping gently into nearby vessels. This isn't dangerous, a counselor insisted. Just interference. Then one ship lost power. Not all power. Just enough. Its engines cut out for half a second. That was all it took. The ship drifted closer to a massive chunk of debris, a dark, irregular shape kilometers wide. Gravity spiked. The ship lurched sideways, hull screaming as structural stress alarms howled. It scraped along the debris, tearing open its flank. The commander watched in horror as the ship was slowly, inexorably crushed, pulled apart not by force, but by imbalance. What is happening? The fleet commander shouted. The analyst's voice shook. Commander, the debris is interacting. Mass fields are reinforcing each other. This isn't random gravity. It's a net, the commander said quietly. A gravity net. The supercarrier had not turned itself into a weapon. It had turned orbit into one. Reminder alarms blared as more ships reported power fluctuations. Navigation systems fought constantly shifting reference points. The closer the fleet moved to the carrier, the worse it became. Pull back, the fleet commander ordered. All ships retreat. Some did. Others couldn't. Thrusters burned fuel just to stay still. Ships that tried to jump found their drives refusing to engage, safety systems locking them out as space-time metrics fell outside acceptable parameters. The field was not strong. It was precise. It punished movement. The commander's gaze snapped back to the supercarrier. It was at the center of it all, battered and burning, doing almost nothing. Commander, the analyst whispered. The carrier isn't generating the field. Then what is? A counselor demanded. The analyst swallowed. The field is passive. The carrier is just the anchor. The realization hit like a blade. The debris field had always been there, carefully placed, calibrated long before this battle. The supercarrier's emergence had merely activated it by adding mass, power, and alignment. The humans had built a trap so large it took centuries to finish. and it only needed one dying ship to spring it. Inside the carrier, another human voice crackled over internal comms. Power levels? Down to 22%. Enough. For Phase 2, came the reply. Barely. A junior officer hesitated. And after that, there was a pause. Then, softly, there is no after. The alien fleet was now in chaos. Ships collided gently at first, then harder. Hulls buckled. Crews screamed as gravity fluctuated wildly, slamming them into floors and ceilings. Weapons were useless. Firing only added recoil, sending ships drifting further into danger. The commander felt cold terror settle deep in her chest. This field, it's not meant to destroy us quickly. No, the analyst agreed. It's meant to trap us, drain us, force us to choose which ships we abandon. The commander closed her eyes. Humans didn't fight battles. They fought wars of attrition, and they had just turned space into a patient killer. A final human transmission reached the fleet, clear, calm, almost gentle. This region is unsafe, the voice said. Your losses will increase the longer you remain. The fleet commander snarled. They're bluffing. The supercarrier responded by doing nothing. The debris field tightened subtly. Another alien ship lost power. Another hull cracked. The message continued. We recommend withdrawal. A counselor laughed hysterically. They're giving us advice now. The commander did not laugh. She recognized the tone. It was not taunting. It was logistics. They don't care if we leave, she realized aloud. They only care that we stop trying. The fleet commander stared at her. Then we break through. Concentrate fire. Destroy the carrier. The commander shook her head slowly. Look at it, she said. That ship has already spent itself. Killing it now changes nothing. Indeed, the supercarrier was barely holding together. Another large section tore free, drifting uselessly away. But the field held. Because the carrier was no longer the key component. It had already done its job. Commander, the analyst said quietly, long-range scans show changes. Where? Everywhere. Data streams flooded in. Human signals across nearby systems were increasing. Traffic rerouted. Colonies activating defenses. Ships moving, not to fight, but to prepare. The delay had worked. The commander felt a grim clarity settle over her. This was never about this battle, she said. No, the analyst agreed. This was about buying time. And showing us something. What? The commander stared at the dying supercarrier, still anchored at the heart of the trap, still shielding Earth simply by existing. What humans do, she said, when they know they cannot win today. The alien fleet finally disengaged in earnest, limping, damaged, disordered. Some ships were left behind, irretrievable. The debris field was not pursued. The supercarrier did not move. It remained, burning, holding. Inside its core, the countdown timer reached 0. A human engineer exhaled slowly. Phase 2, he said. Across the system, far beyond alien sensors, something ancient and deliberate finished waking up. And the galaxy, unaware and unready, took one more step toward a future shaped not by conquest, but by a species that had turned patience into a weapon and loss into strategy. The alien fleet withdrew far enough to breathe, but not far enough to feel safe. Damaged vessels limped into loose formation. Fires burned in vacuum-sealed compartments. Crews worked in silence, haunted by the way space itself had turned against them. Behind them, the debris field remained perfectly still, and at its center, the supercarrier still lived. Barely. On the flagship bridge, emergency councils replaced tactical briefings. No one spoke of victory anymore. They spoke of understanding. Scan the carrier again, the commander ordered. I want everything. Power signatures. Data leakage. Anything. The analyst hesitated. Commander, the signal noise is intense. But we're getting something new. The display shifted. Not weapons. Not engines. Information. Fragments of data leaked from the supercarrier's damaged hull. Unintentional broadcasts caused by failing containment fields. The humans were bleeding something far more dangerous than fire. History. At first, it looked like meaningless clutter. Star charts. Coordinates. Broken recordings. But patterns emerged quickly. Extinct systems. Dead worlds. Empty orbits where cities once burned. The commander leaned forward slowly. These aren't human losses, she said. No, the analyst replied, voice hollow. They're everyone's. The data was old. Some files were dated centuries before humanity officially reached interstellar space. Others were newer, annotated, cross-referenced, studied. The Supercarrier was not just a ship. It was an archive. A counselor scoffed weakly. So they collect stories of failed civilizations. How is that a threat? The analyst brought up a new projection. It showed timelines. Dozens of species. Rise. Expansion. Contact. Conflict. Collapse. Again and again. Different causes. Same ending. Resource exhaustion. Overextension. Galactic attention. They weren't just recording, the analyst said. They were learning. The commander's gaze darkened. Learning what? How long species last once the galaxy notices them? Silence fell across the bridge. Another data stream resolved into clarity, a human annotation, translated with chilling accuracy. Visibility increases risk. Silence increases survival. The commander felt something tighten in her chest. This ship, she said slowly, wasn't hidden because it was unfinished. No, the analyst agreed. It was hidden because it was watching. Inside the Supercarrier, deep within the compressed core, surviving human crews gathered around dim displays. The air was stale, gravity uneven, faces hollow with exhaustion. A senior officer stood before them. Data integrity? She asked. 87%, an engineer replied. We lost some peripheral archives, but the core is intact. The officer nodded. Then it was worth it. A younger crew member swallowed. Ma'am, the alien fleet has access to some of it. They're seeing the archives. Yes, the officer said calmly. That's intentional. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. We didn't just want to survive, the officer continued. We wanted them to understand. Outside, the alien commander stared at a newly decoded file. It was labeled simply. First contact, projection. The contents were blunt. Human models predicting alien behavior based on historical patterns. Assumptions aliens would make. Mistakes they would repeat. The invasion unfolding now was mapped in terrifying detail. This was written before we arrived, a counselor whispered. The analyst nodded. Before your species even knew humanity existed. The commander felt cold dread bloom fully at last. They didn't prepare for us, she said. They prepared for anyone. More files unlocked as the carrier's systems failed. Design philosophies. Strategic doctrines. One phrase appeared repeatedly across centuries of human thought. Do not seek dominance. Seek continuity. The Supercarrier had not been humanity's greatest weapon. It had been humanity's insurance policy. Another data cluster resolved. This one more personal. Human debates. Arguments. Fearful discussions recorded over generations. Should we reveal ourselves? What happens if we become important? How do we avoid becoming a target? The answers were consistent. Hide. Endure. Outlast. A counselor slammed a fist into the rail. So they hid while the galaxy burned? No, the commander said quietly. They hid while the galaxy repeated itself. She gestured to the endless timelines. They learned what visibility costs. The analyst's voice dropped to a whisper. Commander, there's more. A final archive decrypted. It contained no data, only instructions. If the Supercarrier ever activated fully, if it ever emerged from hiding, it meant one thing. Humanity had decided silence was no longer enough. The commander felt her breath catch. That ship, she said slowly, is not a first strike. No, the analyst replied. It's a warning. Outside the debris field, the alien fleet debated its next move. Attack again and risk further losses. Withdraw and admit failure. Before a decision could be reached, a new signal appeared. Not from the Supercarrier. From everywhere else. Human beacons lit up across nearby systems. Old signals, dormant for decades, activated in sequence. Not war calls. Not threats. Notifications. Civilian traffic rerouted. Trade lanes closed. Populations shifted deeper into protected zones. Humanity was not mobilizing to fight. It was mobilizing to disappear again. The commander understood then. The Supercarrier was never meant to survive the war. It was meant to survive long enough. Long enough to show the galaxy the truth. Long enough to make the cost of attacking humanity unmistakable. Long enough to ensure that if the galaxy came again, it would do so with fear. Inside the carrier, alarms sounded softly. Power levels dipped below safe margins. A human engineer looked up. We're nearing final thresholds. The senior officer nodded. Begin final broadcast. The crew hesitated. "This will expose everything," one said. "All our records. All our history." "Yes," the officer replied. "That's the point." Outside, the alien fleet received the transmission. Not compressed. Not encrypted. Open. Humanity's archives poured into space. History, losses, lessons learned from watching the galaxy destroy itself over and over again. Species everywhere would see it. The commander felt the weight of it settle over her. "They're not threatening us," she said softly. "They're educating us." The transmission ended with a single line, translated cleanly across every channel. "We survive by being forgotten. Do not make us memorable." The supercarrier's power flickered. Its core systems began to shut down, one by one, preserving what mattered most until the very end. The ship drifted, still anchored, still holding the field. The alien fleet did not approach again. No one gave the order. They had learned what the humans had wanted them to learn. This species did not conquer. It endured. And endurance, the commander now understood, was far more dangerous than ambition. As the supercarrier dimmed, its purpose complete, the galaxy shifted, not with explosions or proclamations, but with awareness. Humanity was no longer invisible. And that, the commander realized with a shiver, was the most terrifying reveal of all. The galaxy did not react all at once. It hesitated. That alone was unprecedented. For thousands of cycles, galactic history had followed a familiar rhythm. Expansion, contact, conflict, absorption, or extinction. Even disasters moved quickly. Wars flared, systems burned, borders shifted. This time, nothing surged forward. Trade lanes slowed. Military fleets paused mid-deployment. Exploration missions were recalled without explanation. Across hundreds of species, the same data finished downloading. Human archives. Not propaganda. No demands. Records. On distant worlds, alien scholars stared at timelines that mirrored their own histories too closely to dismiss. Rises that looked like triumph. Golden ages that felt eternal. Then sudden collapse, sometimes violent, sometimes quiet. Always final. What disturbed them most was not the deaths. It was the patterns. Human analysts had mapped extinction like weather, not predicting exact storms, but recognizing conditions that always led to disaster. Visibility, centralization, overconfidence. The more important a civilization became, the shorter its remaining lifespan. And humanity had chosen none of that. On the alien flagship, the commander stood alone on the bridge. The council had dispersed hours ago. Each member pulled into emergency consultations with their home systems. She replayed one fragment again and again. A simple human note, buried deep in the archives. If we are known, we are counted. If we are counted, we are measured. If we are measured, someone will decide we are expendable. The commander exhaled slowly. They had done exactly that. The invasion fleet, once a symbol of unquestioned authority, now hung in uncertain orbit far from Earth. No one pressed for renewed assault, because every tactical model now ended the same way. Even if they won, they would be noticed. And that, according to the human data, was how civilizations died. Reports streamed in from across the galaxy. A dominant trade empire halted expansion, citing strategic reassessment. A militant coalition canceled a planned annexation, recalling fleets mid-jump. Even ancient hegemon species, those thought immune to collapse, began sealing archives and fortifying home systems instead of projecting power. Humanity had not fired a shot, yet galactic momentum itself was breaking. The commander activated a secure channel. "Fleet status," she ordered. The reply came quickly. Too quickly. Morale unstable. Crews requesting withdrawal. Several captains have independently locked weapons and refuse further engagement without civilian council approval. She closed her eyes. Her fleet no longer trusted conquest, because conquest now came with proof of its cost. On Earth, beneath oceans and continents, humanity watched in silence. There were no celebrations, no speeches, no victory banners. In deep bunkers and shielded cities, people waited, just as they always had. Systems recalibrated. Supplies were counted and recounted. Evacuation drills continued without interruption. The supercarrier still hung in orbit, dim now, barely alive. Its presence was no longer a threat. It was a reminder. Inside its failing core, a handful of human operators remained. They spoke little. There was nothing left to coordinate. A young technician looked at the status board, then at the senior officer beside him. They're pulling back, he said quietly. Long-range sensors confirm it. The officer nodded. Good. That's it, the technician asked. After everything, that's all. The officer studied the displays. Alien fleets retreating, debris field holding, Earth still intact. That's everything, she replied. Outside, the alien commander finally received the message she had been expecting. A direct transmission from her homeworld. Not orders. Questions. Is it true? Is this species really what the data suggests? If so, what do we do now? She stared at the supercarrier one last time. Scarred. Broken. Still in the way. We do nothing, she replied. On distant worlds, similar conclusions were reached. Humanity had forced the galaxy into an unfamiliar state. Caution. For the first time in recorded history, expansion was no longer seen as progress. Silence became valuable. Smallness became safety. Empires stopped growing. Borders hardened. And everywhere, one unspoken rule spread. Do not draw attention. Do not become important. Do not become human. The supercarrier's power finally dipped below minimum thresholds. Inside, lights went out one by one. Systems shut down in careful sequence, preserving archives until the last possible moment. A final automated signal pulsed outward, not a message, but a confirmation. Phase 2 complete. The debris field relaxed. Gravity normalized. Space became safe again. The trap released its grip. Alien ships fled the region quickly now, eager to put distance between themselves and the lesson they had nearly learned too late. The commander watched the supercarrier drift, lifeless at last. It had not chased them. It had not claimed victory. It had simply existed long enough to change the rules. Back on Earth, humanity returned to its routines. Rebuilding, reinforcing, forgetting. The supercarrier would remain in orbit, a silent guardian and a warning, until it decayed into legend. Eventually, it would be forgotten too. That was the plan. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The galaxy remained tense, but stable. No great wars erupted. No single power dominated. Civilization continued, slower and quieter than before. Humanity was rarely mentioned, except in military academies, except in sealed council chambers, except in the cautionary lessons told to young leaders. There was once a species that hid its greatest weapon inside its own world. It did not conquer. It did not threaten. It simply refused to disappear. And when the galaxy tried to erase it, everything stopped. The alien commander, now old, recorded her final assessment for the archives. She chose her words carefully. Humanity should not be categorized as weak or strong, she dictated. Those concepts do not apply. She paused, remembering the calm human voice, the dying ship that never fired. They are something else. She finished the record with the sentence that would be quoted for generations. When humans decide to endure, the galaxy must decide to wait. Far above Earth, the dark outline of the supercarrier slowly faded against the stars. Not as a monument, but as proof. The war had not ended in victory or defeat. It had ended in consequence. And the galaxy would spend the rest of its existence living inside the space humanity had carved. A future slowed, restrained, and forever aware that somewhere, quietly watching, was a species that survived by refusing to matter, until the moment it absolutely had to. And that realization, spreading from system to system, did more than any fleet ever could. It made the galaxy afraid to move forward. The first time the galaxy officially spoke humanity's name again, it was in a warning. Not a threat assessment. Not a declaration of war. A caution. The record was entered into the Galactic Continuity Archive, an institution older than most civilizations still alive. Its purpose was simple: preserve lessons learned too late. The entry was filed by an alien historian whose species had once ruled 12-star systems and now held 3. She titled it carefully, On Humans and Why We Do Not Provoke Them. Her narration began with a personal memory. I was present when Earth should have fallen. She described the supercarrier, long gone now, how it had emerged not like a predator, but like a shield dragged from the depths of a wounded world. How it had burned. How it had broken. How it had never begged. We mistook silence for weakness, she recorded. We mistook inefficiency for incompetence. We mistook survival for fear. The archive AI flagged the entry as emotionally biased. The historian overrode it. She continued. After the invasion failed, the galaxy changed in ways no one could measure at first. No grand collapse followed. No revenge fleets. Humanity did not expand, did not punish. That unsettled everyone more than retaliation ever could. Empires that had once debated how to divide human space now debated something else. What if they are right? The human archives had shown too much. Not secrets, but patterns no one wanted to see reflected in themselves. Civilizations began auditing their own histories, their own expansions, their own moments of inevitable growth. And everywhere, the same question emerged. When did we become visible enough to die? The historian described the first confirmed consequence. A powerful hegemon species, one that had crushed dozens of weaker neighbors, quietly dismantled its outer fleets. Not from weakness, from fear of becoming noticeable. Another species abandoned a megastructure project mid-construction when human models predicted it would attract predatory attention within 2 centuries. Progress slowed. Then it stalled. The galaxy had learned restraint, not from wisdom, but from example. The historian paused her recording. We feared human weapons, she admitted. We did not expect to fear their restraint. Years after the invasion, a minor border conflict erupted between 2 alien coalitions. Nothing unusual. Such wars happen constantly, until one side accused the other of using human-style doctrine. Endurance, attrition, infrastructure sacrifice. The accusation alone froze negotiations. No one wanted to fight a war that looked human, because human wars did not end quickly. They ended when the other side could no longer afford to exist. On Earth, none of this was celebrated. Humanity returned to obscurity with disciplined efficiency. Colonies reduced emissions. Signals dimmed. Expansion slowed to a crawl. They became bored again. That was deliberate. The historian noted this with grim admiration. They understood something we did not, she said. Victory draws eyes. Survival avoids them. Decades later, the alien commander who had led the invasion, now ancient, her scales dulled with age, was summoned to testify before a joint galactic council. Not to be punished, to be asked. She stood before hundreds of delegates, many from species that had once mocked humanity as insignificant. They asked her one question. Could we defeat them if we tried again? The commander did not answer immediately. She remembered the Supercarrier turning its broken side outward. The roll call of the dead spoke without pause. The way space itself had been weaponized patiently, without anger. She answered honestly. Yes, she said. We could destroy Earth. Murmurs spread. She raised a clawed hand. But we would not survive doing so. Silence fell. They do not fight for victory, she continued. They fight for continuity. And they will spend everything, ships, cities, generations, if it means their story does not end. She looked around the chamber. Ask yourselves, she said quietly, how many of you would do the same? No one answered. The council adjourned without a vote. The historian closed her archive entry with a final observation. Humanity did not terrify the galaxy by rising, she recorded. They terrified it by refusing to fall. The final consequence came centuries later. A new extragalactic threat appeared, vast, hungry, indifferent. A force that had ended other galaxies without noticing. The first species to encounter it panicked. Fleets mobilized. Signals flared. Old habits returned. Then someone remembered Earth. Not as a military power. As a model. Messages were sent. Not demands, not pleas. Requests. Humanity responded slowly. Carefully. When they finally spoke, it was not with weapons or fleets. It was with instructions. Reduce visibility. Preserve populations, not territory. Abandon what cannot be defended. Endure. Some species listened. Those that did survived longer than anyone predicted. The historian ended her record with the sentence that would define humanity's place in galactic thought forever. Humans are not terrifying because they destroy civilizations. She paused, then finished. Humans are terrifying because they know exactly how civilizations end, and they are willing to pay any price to make sure theirs is not one of them. The archive is sealed. The entry was classified as essential reading. And far away, in a quiet blue world that most charts no longer emphasized, humanity continued doing what it had always done best. Preparing, waiting, refusing to disappear. The galaxy moved carefully now, because it had learned the truth too late. Humans do not need to conquer the stars. They only need to survive them.